4 of everybody's favorite podcast, at least from last week. How's it hanging? This is Omar. I'm Tom.
Two bad realtors and our opinions.
I mean, we don't have opinions.
Yeah.
We're just bad realtors.
I thought you were going to question if we're bad realtors.
No, that goes without saying.
No.
I mean, you have, although it is a requirement now in South Jersey that you put yourself up there as a top producer and you own a podcast. Because nothing impresses people when you go on listing appointments more than having a podcast.
This is true.
That's what I lead with. I've also had no listing appointments in the last week, so don't lead with having a podcast. In fact, this may be damaging my career. But good news, we got some viewers last week, Omar.
This is true. We had one weirdo that watched overnight last night.
Seriously, how many numbers? What are we up to now?
The last week's episode was 109 views.
I didn't watch it.
Neither did I.
So it's 109 other people
Not
that
us.
spent at least 15 seconds watching.
And if you're watching this and you've watched past episodes, we'd love to know what.
Why?
Yeah.
No.
But in all seriousness, what components, was there anything that you found helpful? Was there anything that you would like us to dive more into?
They're hate watching to feel better about themselves. And they're a shitty podcast.
It could. It's kind of like the, there's a meme out there that shows somebody that, has a bicycle and they're like, oh, well, I wish I had a car. But then there's a guy that is missing legs that wish he was able to ride a bicycle. And the guy with the car wish he had a Lamborghini. And then the guy with the Lamborghini wish they had a helicopter, and so on and so forth. So, if you could use us to make yourself feel better in that light, and maybe a meme will be generated from it, fantastic. Not all heroes wear capes.
I mean, you do what you can. So what's new this week? Anything new you're getting into?
Well, we're going right.
I mean,
into...
I got the list. Don't jump the shark. We got it here.
Okay.
But we're in a new location. Hopefully, it sounds better.
Yeah.
From the one person that gave me feedback last week, it said the audio was still crappy. Thank you.
Was that me?
It was you. It was still crappy, but hopefully this is a little bit better. We're in a different location. We got a different desk, a different layout. Hopefully it makes us look slimmer.
Mm-hmm. The same two idiots.
Same two idiots.
Got better chairs, so I'm sitting more upright. It doesn't look like I'm a baby in the front seat driving my mom's car.
So, yeah. Babies that drive cars, right? It's like those dog memes. But so I guess we'll get into some of the news this week. There's not much different week to week, but we'll jump into one topic, and that's the decoupling of commissions. Why don't you take it and let me know what you're thinking? Because I know we saw a couple articles, people talking about decoupling, officially decoupling, not just hey, I'm going to give you 0% or no dollars.
So things are still up in the air with the whole lawsuit with the NAR and the DOJ, and the phrase that you're hearing thrown out there right now is the decoupling of commissions. And what that essentially means, if you don't already know, is having it so that the seller of a property has no input into what the buyer's agent is going to receive in terms of compensation. A lot of people are panicking, and the important thing to keep in mind is that the new set of rules have not been established yet. That's probably the biggest thing to keep in mind.
Nothing official, but it's kind of like writing's on the wall. It's not really if,
yeah,
it's kind of when.
Right, and how. Yes, it's
sometimes
separated,
why.
But then, yeah. And what are the new rules that we have to navigate along with going to be? And that's probably the bigger mystery right now. So as things stand, sellers are not required, and I'm only speaking in terms of the state of New Jersey, to offer a buyer broker compensation.
That's official now.
That has been.
Yeah.
For quite some time. And they're also not required to offer compensation in order to be entered into the MLS. Previously, in order for a listing to be entered into the MLS, or at least Bright MLS, which is the one that's predominantly utilized in our area in South Jersey, you had to offer some compensation. It could be as little as $1, it could be as high as whatever percentage you want to offer, and anything in between, and that kept everything completely within within the allowable guidelines.
So as riveting as that is, what does that actually mean? For I guess we'll talk to, because I would think that anybody who's watching this is probably an agent. What does it mean to agents? So like if you're an agent on the buy side or the sell side, what does that actually mean to them?
Well, if you're on the sell side, obviously you're the one who's working with the sellers of a property to determine what compensations for the listing, and if they opt to still offer compensation for the buyer's broker. And this is where experience in explaining pros and cons of different scenarios is really going to come into play. So one of the immediate repercussions that has become real prominent, and agents love talking about it, is that the majority of properties that have 0% buyer broker commissions advertised, the days on market are longer. That's not my opinion. That is, you could look up into any MLS, at least in the South Jersey area, and that is an immediate, that is an immediate impact. Well, I'm using South Jersey because if somebody isn't from the area, Bright's going to mean nothing to them.
Nobody's watching from not around here.
That is an immediate impact. So when I'm talking to a seller, I can now speak to one of the potential impacts of offering 0% to the buyer's broker. And again, I can't guarantee that it's going to be lower. All I can do is speak to the empirical evidence and say, here, look, I could open up the MLS in front of them and show them days on market for active listings. And the common thread of, one of the common threads is that for whatever reason, they're sitting on market longer. Now, what are some reasons that you could think that they're going to sit on market longer?
I mean, obviously is the pricing is not correct.
Right.
If your pricing is not correct, it's going to either sit long. Like you could tell when a house is priced right, and there is no right answer for how a house should be priced. It really should be priced competitive, and what you want is you want to have it priced competitive enough to draw as much interest as possible, because when you have two people that like the same property, it drives the price up.
Sure.
But with two people liking the same property, now if there's a 0% commission, that's another factor that's going to have to be taken into consideration in every offer.
Sure. So with that's an important thing to explain to the seller. So if a seller is, regardless of the reason, they want to offer, they're refusing to offer compensation to the buyer's broker, then the next step beyond that, and again, it's not really our business as to the why. If that's what they choose to do, they're well within their legal rights to do so. If they do that, then we need to explain, okay, what happens now when offers come in? The biggest piece is that, okay, when people are sending offers, they're going to send them based on the understanding that the buyer broker commission is not coming from the sale price, that it's going to be a separate line item. The reality is that as a listing agent, we really need to be speaking to our sellers in terms of net. So if you have,
which is really all that matters.
Yes.
Nothing matters except what you walk away with.
What's the bottom line?
Like, what are you walking away with?
Yes.
And it's like the old thought, it's like it really doesn't matter what the person paid for a house. When you're looking at that has nothing to do with what it's worth.
It's nobody's business. You can't count other people's monies. Let's say a person got the house through inheritance, okay? People tend to not be so judgmental about that, because then it's expected, they're
going to make money on it. But if you get a house for $300 and it's now worth $450 and you didn't do anything to it, they're like, well, you didn't even do anything.
Yeah, the end buyer always wants to talk about how much money. Well, you know what? There's things that you could potentially have obtained in life at a steal. You could have gone to a yard sale or an auction or something to that effect and got something at a discount because you just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
It's trading up. That's what you want to do in life. You want to trade up constantly. Keep making more.
But I mean, that's literally any sales, literally anything that you buy. Okay, the iPhone that you're watching this on right now. Okay, in that sad one-bedroom apartment.
What if they have a weird green bubble and they're the Android person that's watching?
Well, then
we got rid of most of them, right?
Yeah,
we did get rid of most of the Android people.
But
I don't care if it's open source.
That phone, people profited on it, and yet you raced to be the first one in line to purchase the phone. So why aren't you counting, Steve Jobs' money?
He's not decoupling any commissions, though. But yeah, I guess like the long and short of it, like getting back to the actual commission portion of it, the being able to decouple them, like buyers are going to be responsible for their own commission. You're going to hire them like you would hire an attorney, and you better find a good agent that's going to work for you and give you something of value. Otherwise, you're going to be replaced.
Sure. And it is going to certainly drive up the quality of the agents that are representing buyers. But going back to the seller portion of this, so if I'm if I'm now representing a seller and they decided that they're offering no compensation to the buyer's agent, I need to explain to that seller what to expect when offers come in. And this could come in a matter of ways, but any way you slice it, it's not going to have an impact on the net offer going to the seller. At the end of the day, the seller should always be, well, one of the big factors in selecting an offer is what is your net going to be? Like minusing out all fees that you're responsible for, what is it that's going to? So let's just keeping math nice and simple. Let's say we have a property that's priced at $100,000, and if the sale price is, if the buyer's going to offer $100,000, and there's going to be a $3,000 commission, okay, just in this particular scenario, paid to the buyer's agent by way of a signed buyer agency agreement. There's a few ways that you could present the offer. You could present it as a $103,000 offer. You're just adding the offer plus the buyer's agency commission. An offer of $103,000, and you could have it so that that's now the sale price of the house, and the seller is responsible for the buyer's broker commission. It's still $100,000 to the buyer's agent, $100,000 to the seller before you minus out any of their other obligations from it.
We kind of touched on that like last week too, as far as like how to structure these spaces. So like that's going to become more prevalent as we go forward.
Yeah. And another way, and again, it's just a slight variation of doing the exact same thing, is that you're offering the seller $100,000 before they are responsible for any of their liabilities on it, and the buyer has a separate line item on the settlement statement where they're paying their agent directly or their brokerage directly that $3,000. So in the end, it makes no difference because that net is still $100,000 to the seller. So as a listing agent, you want to make sure that the seller understands the difference, where if you present it in the first example of 103 with a 3,000 commission versus just 100,000 with 3,000 being paid in a separate area to the buyer's brokerage, it's the exact same thing on the seller's side of the settlement statement. So the listing agents really need to make sure that they're crystal clear on their communication to any listings that they're taking, and making sure that the sellers truly understand what it is that they're doing. Now, for me, being licensed in Pennsylvania, whenever you take a listing, you have to do a seller net sheet. So at the time of signing a listing agreement, you're doing this anyway. So this concept, for me in New Jersey, is nothing new. And for everybody in Pennsylvania, this is really going to be nothing new. Even with like buyers, you have to do buyer estimated cost sheets. They have to sign off on it. And this is at the start of an agency relationship with a buyer or a seller in Pennsylvania. So again, these concepts are already in use in other states. So it's just once the rules are set, it's going to be much easier, because right now, because we're in a gray area and the rules are still in the state of evolution and have not been finalized, some people are doing it the old way, some people are migrating to the new way, and if you've got old and new trying to coexist in the same plane, there's going to be a lot of friction there. It's inevitable, and this is where conversations, relationships, dialogues between agents, okay, is critical. You know, if I have I'm taking a buyer that I've got a signed buyer agency agreement with, and I'm showing them a listing that offers zero commission to the buyer broker, the very first thing I want to do is pick up the phone and talk to that listing agent and ask them, what's the conversation you've had with your seller? How should I be presenting the offer? Do I present it as just tack it on with the understanding that you're going to explain it to the seller the way that I present it, that, okay, yes, here's the offer, but here's this portion of it is the buyer broker commission? Or does it need to be a separate line item altogether? Because reality, again, it's the exact same thing. It's just we're pushing figures across a column. It's just what presentation do you prefer it in?
Yeah, I mean, that sums it up. I mean, honestly, the decoupling commissions, like, it's going to be a give and a take. And honestly, until it's official, there's no reason to really speculate. Just kind of prepare,
Yeah.
brace, but don't get too attached to any one way of doing things because it's definitely going to change. So, kind of segue into our next section. So I got a question for you and for people. We've had some conversations in the last few weeks with some pretty successful people, and the idea of building a team came up. You have a team. You're building a team.
Sure.
So there's a couple things that go into a team that I think there's a misconception. And as the decoupling of commissions happens, I think that teams are going to get more prevalent because teams are going to give you the power, the structure. They're going to give you different things that you can't necessarily do on your own that are going to be beneficial in this new real estate market that we're getting into.
Sure.
So for anybody out there that's thinking about joining a team, I kind of want to kick some ideas around you, like the benefits and negatives of joining a team. Not what we're really looking at, but like for your career.
Sure.
So in a career move, if you go to a team and you make more money, that's a positive, right?
Yes.
Now, if you where would the negative mindset creep in?
So the biggest thing that I see is being too hyper focused and not seeing the forest through the trees. And what I mean by that is, okay, so when I was a brand new agent, I started on a team, okay? And I was on a 50-50 split. Now, because I was getting so many leads and I was actually working and closing these leads, my first 6 months, I had about 40 closed transactions in my first 6 months.
That's not normal, though.
I put in more time, I put in more hours, and I would say that's probably a unique situation. When I say unique situation, unique to me and my work ethic. Other people can do it, and it's just a question of doing or not doing. Execution is what it comes down to. There were other people on the team before me and after me that had the same opportunity, and my production was and still remains higher. But I don't want to get into my work ethic. I want to get into teams.
You should lead with that whenever you meet people about your work ethic and production. Now, I think what I want to talk about is the negative idea of joining a team.
Sure. So
because it's not a step backwards in a career.
No.
In the general sense, it really what it does is it's not people giving you leads. It's not really people doing things for you. It's kind of having a system in place that you can step into and maximize your own sphere and maximize maybe somebody else's time that they've already gone through to learn certain skills.
Sure.
And create more business for yourself. And then whether you stay there or not, it's not necessarily you're going to be there forever unless you're really happy. Because most people leave.
For some people, that is the most lucrative choice to stay. And for others, it's to leave. So there isn't a right or wrong that blankets everybody.
You leave when you feel like you're not appreciated or compensated in a way that you feel like you're putting in. If I'm putting more in and getting less out, then it's going to make it seem well, maybe I can go somewhere else and make the same thing. Or I want to start my own team. I see what Omar does. He's not doing much. Mm-hmm. And all the time, effort, systems, things like that you and I have created over the last 5 years, we want to give to people.
Sure.
And we want to basically erase 5 years of trial and error.
That's one of the biggest benefits right there, is leveraging each other's trial and error. And with our daily meetings, between us or any members on the team, one of the big things I always instill in the newest agents on the team, and it doesn't matter if it's someone who just got their real estate license or a tenured agent, our experience sets and our histories are different. Some of the challenges that I've overcome as an agent are different than some of the ones that you have. And as a team collectively, there are certainly experiences that members of our team had that I didn't personally go through myself that I learned from. And it was a joint learning effort. But it didn't take all of us to go through the same trials and tribulations to walk out with the benefits of having overcome those said trials and tribulations. So any challenge that I've ever overcome as an agent, that's automatically part of your skill set and every other agent that's on our team. And this is why, whenever we see issues, I could have a team member call me up in a panic and I'm like, don't sweat it. I've done this. Here's how you handle it. And the response is always, it's that easy? Like, yeah. Now, it wasn't that easy when I overcame it because it was a new concept, but because now there's that experience factor. And again, it's the cumulative experience of the team. It's like when you hire one of us, you're getting all of us, all of our skill sets, all of our experience levels.
And that's why it's more important than ever to, if you're looking for a team, to not just join any team. And like if somebody wants to break off and start their own, the main skills you have to have, like it's a great idea, but it goes back to the best person in sales. Like if you're the number one agent, it doesn't mean you're going to be the number one team lead. It's a very different skill set to build other people and to be able to run for yourself.
To be able to motivate, to be able to care about them, to be able to just be emotionally vested in their well-being and their success. It's critical. And there's, you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, there's plenty of team leads out there that are successful solo agents, and once they try to create a team, it's just not.
And what happens is it
leaders.
degrades into that person just making a little bit on each person until that person leaves, and they fill it with another person. So when you're looking for a team, this is going to be a question, and we'll kind of move on after this. But what are you looking for? So if somebody because the team has to make sure there's the right fit for them too. So I'm a big proponent of when you're looking for something, you have to put it out there that you're looking for this,
right?
And that way the people will attract to the things that you're looking for,
right?
We're not looking for tribe. Yeah, well. Somebody should put that on a T-shirt or put it on the wall, and it'd probably make a lot of money.
Yeah, a great real estate meme.
Ugh. But what? So as far as for us, because we're not necessarily in absolute growth mode, but I think we're starting to look to grow the team and to grow with talent, people that see themselves a certain way. I want you to kind of put it out there, what is that person? What are some things that person possesses? It doesn't have to be sales. Obviously, it's not going to be sales.
Right.
It's got to be a person, because people first. It's not sales first. It's people first.
Right.
What is that person we're looking for?
So the big thing is somebody that is coachable and teachable. Somebody that has a thirst for bettering themselves. Someone who can actually take instructions and follow through and execute. Someone who's not afraid to try things. I see some people that they get so bogged down in the theoretical concept of doing literally any task and they'll study, and train. But then when it's time to actually do it, they choke and they freeze. And that's a critical flaw for anybody in any industry, not just in real estate. Someone who's got a little bit of, what's the phrase that I'm looking for? That they're almost they're smart enough to prepare for something, but dumb enough to not be afraid. And there is a balance and a cross-section in there that will create the ideal candidate for our team specifically. I've got a very hands-on approach with all the agents on my team to the level that it's needed. As people become a little more self-sufficient, then the meetings and the subject matter of any meetings that we have evolves and becomes more complex and probably a little less frequent. But again, it's as needed, and there's other agents that I talk to more frequently because the necessity is higher, and it's usually on the front end of things. Or if there's something really challenging that they're digging through, then I might have more time invested day to day. But another important thing is that I need to make sure that I have the availability to be there for them in the varying amounts, especially as the team grows. I need to have more time freed for those pop fly situations. If I'm just bogged down in appointments myself, then it's I'm really not a good team leader at that point. The availability definitely does need to be there from the team lead, whether it's this one or any other team in the country.
And I think having the right people around, so the team helping and the structures and systems we put into place in the last specifically 2-3 years, as far as following up with people, automating certain things. And now everybody has automations, but doing them and doing them well is a huge difference. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't know or don't care that an automation is oh yeah, that's set. We're good. We're following up with them. And I mean, you and I, I had it set this week, 6 months ago. I put it in. I got 6 phone calls on Saturday, and I was like, oh, what did I put in there? It's an automation that we wrote a year ago that was following up with this person 6 months ago. So it was a couple of rental leads that we had a rental drip. Yeah. It brought out people that otherwise wouldn't be there. And, of them, like I think there was like 2 that really were like, "Hey, leave me alone." But whatever, they took the time to reach out to me and say, "Leave me alone."
Yeah,
So
and that's okay. Like that's the point. Is there's percentages in all of our leads. So I think the big takeaway, well, there's a few obvious takeaways. Is the larger your database, the better. So just dump leads, contacts, social media, personal. Everybody needs to be in your database. Everyone's going to be handled differently. It could be potential clients. It could be cold dead leads. It could be tire kickers. It could be people that reach out once in a while. It could be family. It could be friends. It could be there's all sorts of different bins that you would put people into, and the follow-up plan would be different. Like if my mom's in there, I'm not sending her a meme saying, "Remember to set your clocks back." Like
if you send me that meme, I'm going to delete it anyway. But I think one thing that, like, before we move on, I do want to send out to people, like, we want to help people. So if you're using a CRM or if you have a question and you want to sit down with people that have been through this process, this is not a recruiting tactic. This is literally like if you need help with your business and need to figure it out, call us. Like this is something like we've been through. I'm a big proponent of like, don't listen to people that haven't done it yet. Mm-hmm. Like if you're trying to do something and nobody's done it, don't listen to those people. They don't know what it takes to do it. We've gone through kind of the trenches of trying to figure out these different CRMs, what works, what doesn't, the follow-up campaigns that go into those and how to implement them. We're happy to share. Like we are open books and we will save you time, hopefully, or you're just going to hang out with us and you can see the awesome set that we have here. But either way, like we would like to help people. So if it is something you're interested in, please like find a way to get in touch with us. We have our numbers linked below. We're going to have contact stuff. You can email us, text us, whatever works best. So next section we're going to kind of get into, I'm going to throw this to you too, because we were kicking it around and we stopped because we were like, hey, we got the podcast. We're not going to talk about this now. But it's a topic that I think we both, have things that we go back and forth with on this and agree with. But the concept of being addicted to procrastination. So when you said it, what was going through your mind when you said it to me?
So I was recently, that thought and that mantra was, the inspiration came from a TV show that I was watching that is specifically...
What show?
Loudermilk.
Oh, great show.
And,
you put me on that show.
And so Loudermilk, the main character, Sam Loudermilk, he is an addiction counselor, for like an AA type group. And if you don't know who Ron Livingston is, he was the main character of Office Space.
Great movie.
And such a great
It still
movie.
holds up.
And his humor still shines through, but
he's the same
he's
character.
evolved.
He's literally the guy who burned the building. That's him.
Yeah.
25 years later.
So he's an addiction counselor, and through the show, I started as I'm watching like the characters evolve, like the people that have been addicts. Just something that started to resonate with me was that thought, and what that means is that the whole phrase "we're addicted to procrastination" is exactly that. I mean, take it at face value, in that it makes us feel temporarily good. In the same way that if you had a rough day at work, that you might have a drink to take the edge off.
So all realtors for the last 3 months.
Everybody, it's just, and what it is, it's another drug. Like procrastination creates a dopamine release. Human beings, we chase dopamine. And some people it's through OCD. It could be, it could be through drugs. It could be gambling. It could be shopping. It could be hoarding. But procrastination, I'm telling you, it produces such a dopamine release to people. When people have this inevitable thing that they need to do, it's like they're whoopee. It just feels so good to not do it. But then what's the obvious negative impact of procrastination?
I mean, not doing anything. You don't get anything done.
Not doing it, or you're rushing through whatever it is that you have to do, but you have to do it anyway. But yet, for some reason, by design, human beings are always going to lean to that path of least resistance and procrastinate. So, and this isn't even real estate specific. I mean, this applies to like all facets of life.
I mean, I could procrastinate with the best of them. Like when I was in high school and college, I was one of those people that I didn't study hard. I didn't study anywhere near as hard as I could or should have. when I was there because the testing came easy enough. I didn't ace it, but it was like, a B plus, and that's good enough to get through. So I think there's a difference between like procrastinating, which is just like leaving things to the last minute, and active procrastination, because actively procrastinating is doing something else that's not moving the needle.
Sure, and that absolutely applies to the same concept too. It's like, all right, it's time for you to make your marketing calls. Like, all right, I'm gonna start calling my clients. Oh, Mary got a new cat. Oh, look at this on Instagram. This is a cat meme. It's two
Don't make
cats.
fun of cats.
What type of potato are you? Let me take that
Idaho.
survey. I'm a red potato. I'm a sweet potato.
But like actively
I am.
That section's later. But actively procrastinating, like for me, I was like during COVID, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn a skill, and I really dug into like a couple different like email campaigns and funnels and things like that I really dug into then. But I think I actively procrastinated for, I don't know, a year and a half on that before I actually started to take action, and that's because I was reading books, I was studying. I spent all my time studying and no time implementing.
Right.
And
you overly trained, but never did.
like if I did at the same thing every day of the year, I would be no closer to the goal that I wanted to do at the end of the year than I was in the beginning, because it wasn't moving the needle. Like it was like spending all my time not moving the needle. And I think there's a nice ratio, because it's not. I'm not saying like books are bad but you learn so much more.
You do.
From just doing.
But is that now justification to not take action? On some level.
Oh, well, I am taking action. I'm just taking no action. So I'm justifying in my head that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm moving the needle. Mentally, I get the dopamine release of like, yeah, I'm creating a business, creating Spot.
Right. You're justifying the action that is taking place, which is the study. But the deeper dive is that is
non-action,
smoke and mirrors. Yeah. Right. It's justifying why you're not taking the action that you should be taking.
Exactly.
And we're all guilty of it, for sure. And when you get into doing other positive things, it's like, it's time for me to do my marketing calls. I need to clean my house. Okay, well, it's not a bad thing to clean your house.
Pay attention to those triggers too, because those triggers will always creep up. You're like, oh, you know what, it's time to go. Well, you know what, I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to go make coffee, and then I'll come back and do. Right. Like that's a big trigger for me. Is like, oh, this is getting a little low. Maybe I'll go make a pot, and I'll come back and I'll do my cold calls that I've been trying to put off. Because like cold calling, I've done thousands of cold calls. I still hate it. It's still not fun. It's still not comfortable.
It's
people
not
hanging
sexy.
Up.
There's nothing fun about it.
Well, you haven't seen me make the cold call. Have you seen this T-shirt while I make cold calls? It's hard to be. But I think that people use that as, I agree 100%, like the procrastination of doing things. People will do stuff in between without actually taking the action.
Sure.
So I think just acknowledging it is step one.
Right.
To getting there.
And it's critical. And self-awareness with anything, just admitting that there's a problem is on the road to taking the actions that you should be taking.
Yes.
And not just continuing down that same hamster wheel of like, well, I didn't get to this because I had to do that. And yes, you could state that that is something that should be done, but when you're using it as a crutch to not get to the larger, more important item at hand, now it's a drug.
Yeah.
And that's us being addicted to procrastination.
Absolutely. And I think everybody if you can acknowledge it, you're halfway there. So halfway there, not there.
Knowing is half the battle.
So now we're going to get into another section. This is the most popular section of our show, based on the three people that made it to spike up last week, and it's the questions that nobody asked us. And I'm going to put a little stinger in here, like it's going to come through and it's going to pop up. So, questions nobody asked us, Omar. Will you lower your commission?
No.
Fair enough. Why?
Because I know what my time is worth. And okay, here's another article that I read was one of the possible new adjustments is for agents to bill hourly versus a flat rate or a percentage.
It works for attorneys.
It works real well for attorneys.
Yeah.
Why do you think they've got that clock going every second that
It's like a chess timer, like ding.
Yes. So let's say you're a really picky buyer and you want to go to the same house 50 times and you want to go to 20 more houses. Okay, it's like being in a taxi where like, all right, we could drive all day. And it's like, even when you're stopped, that clock is still rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. It doesn't even matter what you set the hourly rate as. You're just looking at the total net number of hours. If you're an indecisive buyer, you're going to go bankrupt doing that, no matter what that hourly rate is set at. But to my original point is another reason that's bad is, well, we put in a lot of time behind the scenes that our clients are not aware of. So when people think that we're overpaid, okay, if you want an agent that's going to be highly responsive, that's always available, okay, you essentially need to have them on retainer for you until that transaction gets to the closing table. If you want to undercut them, okay, well then why should I give you the same amount of time as someone who's negotiating a higher overall rate? They're going to pick and choose, and the ones that are going to have the best experience are going to be the ones that are giving or that are negotiating a fair compensation to the agent based on the amount of time and work that they're putting into it. That's just common sense. If I'm going to just hire the cheapest guy for any job, chances are I'm going to get subpar results or subpar product in return. So is that what you really want for one of the biggest purchases you're going to make in your life, is the cheapest bidder?
Yeah, it's the cheapest house. I mean, like, you have to look at your value, and like, again, it goes back to the value that the agent brings. If every agent is exactly the same and you commoditize the agent, you're going to go with the cheapest one because there's no differentiator in value.
Right.
Whereas if you can differentiate and you bring value to somebody and you can justify like, hey, you're going to spend 10 here, but you're going to make 20. Every person with a brain is going to be like, I will take what's going to net me higher. They have to believe you though. If you're not getting through, they don't believe you and you're not as convincing as you think you are.
Yeah, there has to be a return on investment for sure.
They have to see the return too.
Yeah.
So, next question. What does a person have to do, client, for you to not work with them? What would you fire a client for?
The basis of it is always going to be unrealistic expectations. Every agent out there has had a client, let's say they're approved up to 300,000. They're like, well, what I like doesn't exist in 300. Let's look at 4, and then we're just going to offer less. My heart goes out to any agent that's stuck in that situation. In that case, I mean, the phrase is champagne taste on a beer budget. We're in a seller's market right now where any house that's priced appropriately, it's going to sell fast. Day one listings, if you offer anything less than asking, in most cases,
if it's priced correctly.
If it's priced correctly, okay, and priced correctly meaning like you're factoring in sold comparables of like properties, factoring in days on market, and it's in apples to apples condition. Okay, you can easily anticipate a pretty close range of what that house is going to sell for. Within like a $10,000, $15,000 range. Now, if the house is horribly overpriced, well, one of the indications of that would be what?
It's sitting on the market for a while?
Sure. So if you want to underbid on properties, the smart first step is to look for the ones that have high days on market. Because now at that point, the sellers have had an opportunity.
They're going to get a little desperate at that point because it's sitting there for a while.
Well, I don't know that desperate is even the word that I would think of.
I like my properties desperate, Omar.
But more so, desperate house.
Desperate house.
Lives.
Yeah.
But if you have something that was just listed in the past week, the sellers haven't had an opportunity to see the impact of the price that they chose, whether
Correct.
it's too high, too low, or just right. So,
and you're not going to get 100,000 under ask because
no.
Why would they drop 100,000 under ask within the first 3 days?
I've never seen it happen. I will never say it's impossible. I've never seen existence of that situation happening.
You got to know what you're doing when you go into it. So
right. So you need to target the ones that have been on market a while. or something that's just there's something off about it. It's maybe the whole thing is completely dated, livable but dated. You've got ugly finishes, and you can get in there at that price that you want, and update it as you choose to as time goes on. So that's a critical mistake. And if I have a buyer that wants to bid 25, 50,000 less on day one listings, it's not going to end in a sale. So that hurts the buyer. So does that buyer want to spend their time, spend their gas, spend their days just getting no after no after no after no? Now, that buyer would make a great salesperson because they're not afraid of no. They're actually wired to be the perfect salesperson. But it's setting yourself up for failure. And our fiduciary responsibility to our clients is to not have them set up for failure. So I would be doing a disservice by not setting them on the right path and showing them, like, look, okay, if you're approved up to 300, any houses that are at 300, we want to look at ones that have been on market for, I don't know, maybe 30 days at least. Or if you want to really give yourself an advantage, look at houses at like 250, 275 that are day one listings, so that you've got wiggle room in
To
what
go
you're,
up to get it.
right, to go up to the amount that you're approved for. That's the right way to do it.
I'm going to go on the other side for this question. So for me not to want to work, like when you first start, you want to take every person that comes across your plate. Mm-hmm. And you probably, I don't want to cross people off because you really don't want to do it, but you have to see if like you're going to spend more time with these people than your families in a lot of situations, because like you're going to be like, for 2 months you cram a ton and you become friends. Like people that become friends with their clients, you spend a ton of time.
It's a relationship for sure.
And they're trusting you with a huge purchase in their life.
One of the biggest.
And like, so if you feel like they are not a trusting person, or they're not going to believe you for the value that you bring,
that's a problem.
That's a problem. It's a red flag, and you really need to address that. And if it's the case and that's the way, it may be a personality thing. It may not. It may just be.
It could be
their personality. But
yeah.
if it might be better, and some cost in time, mm-hmm. to not work with somebody who doesn't see your value.
Sometimes there's just people don't mesh for a reason that you can't put your finger on. Sometimes someone sometimes they just don't like my face.
Which, it's everywhere, but but when you have people like that, like if they're not going to respect your time, mm-hmm. it's better to leave, because at some point, and again, here's another one, if they bounce on another agent to come to you, it's almost like the cheating spouse syndrome. If they left somebody else to go to you, they're going to leave you to go to somebody else the second you're not available.
Unless that agent was the problem.
Maybe. But also, I don't love, like, that agent didn't set them up. So some real estate agent at some point, they may not value your profession. And that's kind of like ultimately where I'm getting.
Sure.
If they don't value your profession and your like what you bring to the table, cut them.
Right. There are certain components where they shouldn't be.
They'd be better off working with somebody else.
Right.
And that because your time is valuable. And as an agent, that's the only thing you have control over, is like how you spend your time and how you budget your time. Because everybody only gets 24 hours in a day. And in this business, you got to be hands-on with everything if you're running through it. So, all right. So what pisses us off this week? Is there anything that's grinding your gears, Omar? If you're peaceful again, I'm going to lose it. You can't be peaceful every week.
This is an old one, but it's still happening, is agents not keeping your listings current.
Ooh.
Going to schedule showings.
Preach.
And it's not available. Or if you decline a showing and you don't give a reason why, and then you get mad that we request like a different time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's poor communication.
You put it on the MLS.
Right. You have it as active, so why are you getting mad that like I keep trying different times? It's like, honestly, it's like the game Battleship. You're literally just guessing where the ships are.
Tell me where the ship is. Let me know when to go in the door.
Or it's like when my wife is mad at me but won't tell me why. It's like, so I just need to keep guessing?
My wife's always mad at me, so and she'll never listen to this because she doesn't have the patience to get to minute 50 or whatever we're at right now.
Yeah,
so
she turned off at minute
episode 1. So things that are driving me crazy this week: Facebook, the @highlight feature.
God, I hate you if you highlight everyone or @highlight.
It's essentially I want to spam everybody on my list with this because you all need to see it.
Yeah.
And if it is not a highlight of something that everybody wants to see, like one and done. Like I think I'm muting people if they use the @highlight feature. Like I don't know if it's like the reply all button.
Right.
Like some people, there needs to be like a class on the reply all button when you're on an email thread.
Yeah.
You're like, this person doesn't know what they're doing. Like when they a happy birthday email goes out. And then you have everybody like, oh, happy birthday. He's like, I was also going to say happy birthday. Like your reply all button needs to be muted. Just like the @highlight feature on Facebook
Yes.
needs to be muted, or a class or a certification to use it. Because
Of learning how just not to be that a-hole.
everybody is an expert. Everybody wants to see your shit, and it's not that important.
So
it's not that
I have
great.
an idea. So if someone's going to do that, and
Do we say them back?
I'm call them out. We're going to make like an America's Most Wanted of people that abuse that @everyone or @highlight.
I like to complain, but I don't like to get called out on my stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. You want to make a hit list? We'll have a list back here of anybody that uses that next week because we promised 5. You'll be on the hit list next week. You'll be a name on the board.
The offenders, yeah.
So
We're gonna
all you people
we're
who
gonna
are
blow you up for abusing that @highlight and @everyone. Now,
everybody not watching right now, nobody's going to know this, and nobody's even going to see themselves on the board. But you're on the list.
if it's for a good cause, you're sponsoring a charity, like something like that. That
Misuse of the highlight button.
Yes, there's knowing when and when not to.
I need to have a class on that.
And there's one person that constantly does it to me.
You want to call him out, or do you?
No, I'm gonna see if he watches this and course corrects.
So it's a he. So all you women, you're safe.
Maybe.
So yeah, that feature is driving me crazy, and I guess it just came out, so people don't know exactly how it's done yet, and maybe
Or how rude it is.
A little grace period, but the @highlight feature, despise it. I guess we're going to end this week, and so we'll go news. Anything coming up this week that you want to promote, talk about? People won't see till next week, so
We're looking for quality agents. If you think you're cut from a cloth that would play nice with us, please reach out.
So I'm gonna shout out a couple things that we're doing and the people we know are throwing this week. So we have the event tomorrow. I know Santini and Sam DeMeo are going to be speaking with a bunch of other people that are in there.
Tim Toncheshin,
Yeah,
Rich Rosenberg, and there's one person I'm forgetting.
But either way, so that panel should be good. So if you get a chance, or if you don't, I think tickets are sold out or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we're there, come say hey. And then the day after that, I know Joe Albano, Joe Harris, a couple other people have thrown together a
networking event.
A networking event that we're also going to be at it's speed dating.
Right.
So that should be good. We're looking forward to seeing everybody. And then I guess we'll end it with the favorite of myself is Dad Joke of the Week.
Dad joke of the week.
Hit me.
So my wife told me that I couldn't build a car out of spaghetti. You should have seen her face as I drove past her.
Pasta. I get it. So I named my dogs Timex and Rolex. They are my watchdogs. They're always wound up. Count it. Another one in the books.